this is BNN, and today we are going to review the documentary, Atari, Game Over, and directly after the review I will be doing a Let's Play of ET, the extraterrestrial video game by Atari, featured in this film, just because I want to see how bad the game really is. Anyway, this is the IMDb page for the film. A crew digs up all of the old Atari 2600 game cartridges of ET the Extra-Terrestrial that were tossed into a landfill in the 1980s. It is directed by Zak Penn, who mostly writes scripts and screenplays, from the look of it. And after watching this movie, I can tell you this guy needs a lot more work as a director. The film isn't bad, by any means. It just could have been executed a lot better. He could have asked better questions during the interviews. He could have examined more of pretty much everything. The film was entertaining, but only because the subject matter and story are very entertaining. Regardless, I highly recommend this documentary. It is only about an hour long, but you'll learn a ton about early gaming and stuff. Basically, this documentary is exploring an urban legend about how Atari buried millions of copies of ET, the Extra-Terrestrial game in the middle of the desert because the game sucks so bad. What I am about to tell you will include spoilers for this documentary, so if you want to skip to the gameplay footage, click here, right where it says skip to the Let's Play. Okay, you've been warned. So back in the early 80s, Atari was the only major gaming system around, and they were dominating. The blockbuster movie, E.T., the Extra-Terrestrial, came out in the early 80s, and Atari needed to make a video game about E.T. before Christmas. So they tapped their top guy, their top programmer, who is interviewed in this documentary and seems like a really cool guy, and they told him to make the game in 5 weeks. Normally a video game, at that time, took 4 or 5 months to make. Anyway, this guy took up the challenge and finished the game right before the deadline. Steven Spielberg, who had to sign off on the final product, is shown in archival footage, endorsing the game. Anyway, the game was released and it sold millions of copies. However, the game is super hard to play, let alone beat, as I personally discovered just an hour ago. So millions of people returned the game. Atari took about a $20 or $30 million loss on the game. A few years later, Atari went out of business and everyone blamed the game. The hotshot programmer who created the game was pretty much blackballed from all the gaming and computer companies, while his co-workers went on to become millionaires. There is a scene in the documentary where the programmer visits the old Atari headquarters and you can literally see the pain in every step he takes. It is very emotional just watching him, but don't feel bad for the guy. He goes on to become a well-known psychotherapist in Silicon Valley. I am spoiling the hell out of this documentary, so here is another chance to click here and go straight to the Let's Play footage. Anyway, the documentary does an awful job of explaining why Atari really went out of business, but it more or less has to do with Atari oversaturating the market with the 2600 Atari gaming console. I think. I seriously don't know. I wish they took 3 more minutes to explain that better. Anyway, back in the days, everyone blames the fall of Atari, a billion-dollar company at the time, on the failure of ET, which only lost them a fraction of what their company was worth. So Atari dumped a bunch of games in a landfill and buried them. This documentary does a great job of showing them excavating the games, and confirming the urban legend, somewhat anyway. It is revealed that only 10% of the games Atari buried were actually ET games. Anyway, I recommend this documentary if you want to learn more about Atari's downfall. But unfortunately you will have to supplement this film with your own personal research on the internet. Anyway, onto the Let's Play.